You don't talk to your neighbour?
No, she didn't talk to us. She's terrified of me, I think.
Why did you shout at her?
Because she reckons that we shouldn't shower using a pump that we've got. Because she's got post-neurotic disease syndrome. What's it called?
PTSD.
Yeah, she's got that.
Post-trauma.
And she thinks that when somebody has a shower in here, she thinks her roof's going to fall in and all the water's going to come through. Mind you, our shower is not above her, it's a long way to one side of her, so she's barking.
Well, talking about barking, I'm sitting down with my ex-partner in crime on the writing front, Stuart Kerr. Now,
K-E-R-R is pronounced car.
I knew you were going to say
in
that.
In our game.
Okay, explain.
And that's, I don't have to explain it. It was what I was called by my mum and dad. I don't know why.
So I've been saying it wrong for decades.
My dad's mother, who was Alice, she married a guy called John James Kerr in the late 19th century, and it didn't work out. And so they split up, and a few years later, she was going through quite a few blokes, and my dad came along.
What do you mean going through quite a few blokes?
Well, she was quite a busy girl. She was quite. My grandmother Alice.
She was
very proper. She was very proper, very clever woman, and so when my dad never knew who his father was, but she made her husband, who was the man that she split up with, seemingly was his father. So my father was told that his father was John James Kerr, but it wasn't, and there was no way of knowing or proving that. But after she died, my dad found some of her things, and he found John James' address in a little address book. And my dad, with my mum, next day, they drove down the A40 and went over to Willesden, to a flat in Cricklewood High Street, and knocked on the door. My mum stayed downstairs, my dad went up there, and this guy came to the door, and my dad explained that he thought he was probably his father. And the bloke said, "There's no way I could possibly have been your father, dear chap. I'm sorry to disappoint you." And he gave the reasons why, because he couldn't stand Jack's mother, my grandmother, and they'd split up ages before, and he didn't even know she'd had a child, so there, you know. And there was no DNA in those days. But that story has a resolution years later when I got ancestry off you, Bob.
Right.
You gave me the ancestry.
Yeah, I'm
bug.
sorry about that. Found out
did.
You're not posh at all.
Yeah, you did. You were getting on with it, and I got into ancestry, and then I did a DNA test, and lo and behold, I'm quarter Jewish.
What?
Which means my father was 50% Jewish, which means that Alice was having an affair with a completely 100% Jewish man, which would have been my great-grandfather, if only I could find the bastard, which would be very nice. But I think I'll get him. I'm looking, on the hunt.
So, well, anyway, that's a bit of a mystery. I always thought you were really posh, you know, from a respectful
Did you enjoy that?
background. I did, yeah.
It's not a very interesting story, actually.
No, I know you got far more interesting ones than that. Like comedy.
Comedy, what about it?
Well, you are a comedic influence on me, believe it or not.
A what?
Comedic influence.
Am I? Well,
yeah, I thought you had good comic writing.
I did. I think I'm probably the most knowledgeable Joe Orton director alive, because I've directed every one of his plays, and I like Joe Orton. I've studied him a lot, and that's one part of comedy. But then I spent a bit of time at Bristol Old Vic Theatre School, and there was a guy there called Nat Brenner, who was the head of it, and he knew quite a bit about comedy, and he taught me stuff. And it's very serious business.
It is serious business.
It's serious. It's not. I did a great play at a theatre in Watford about 30 years ago called Comedians by Trevor Griffiths. Trevor Griffiths is quite a bloody wonderful writer. And that play is about people at comedians' college learning how to be comedians.
Right.
And it's very sad and very funny. And there are lines in it that stick in your memory, like comedy is serious business, not coloured sweeties to rot your teeth with. You know, and this what the guy that's teaching, played by Jimmy Jewell, famous ex.
I remember him.
You know, good bloke, really good bloke. And that's a great play. That play teaches you about comedy.
But
It's serious stuff. Laughter. Let me tell you about laughter. Laughter is condescending adults in a room laughing a lot, especially at political jokes, is not laughter. That's
do you mean condescending or consenting?
Consenting adults.
That was a brilliant malapropism there.
Well, it's a brilliant one. It's consenting and condescending.
Yes.
You know, it's if you have your prejudices or your feelings or your opinions confirmed and the other side rubbished, then of course people are going to laugh. But that doesn't make it funny. It's not funny at all. It's a bit sad, really. Seeing people, it's faux laughter. And there's a lot of faux laughter in stand-up comedy. But real comedy hits the guts. And you don't know why, but you have to laugh. And it's almost painful. It's almost too much. When you get real laughter, people go, no, stop it, because it could kill them. It's so funny.
Yeah.
You know,
a way to go, though.
Yeah, a great way to go. Great way to go.
I love it that you directed Joe Orton, because Joe Orton's one of my favourites. I mean, it's so risque, isn't it?
His masterpiece is What the Butler Saw.
Yeah.
Loot, and entertaining Mr. Sloane. I think he was on his way then. I like some of his early pieces, like Riffing on the Stair.
Yeah.
Which they started out as radio plays, because it was just around the time he was in prison.
Yeah.
When that
defacing all those books.
Defacing library
Malicious
books.
damage.
With the bloke that eventually beat his head in.
Halliday.
And killed him. Yeah, but...
so you must have done some serious
I've done
academic work.
I think.
Get that.
I think What the Butler Saw is one of the most difficult plays to understand and direct, and I'll tell you why. I'll compare him to somebody like Noel Coward, or comic writers of that sort. Their writing is always done with a lead up, bridging to the next laugh. And there can be quite a long time between one laugh and another, and they're lovely and charming. But they're not like Orton. Orton is machine gunning, and he demands that the actors really, really listen to each other, because every reply in a sequence is illogical and brilliant. It moves everything.
Yeah.
It goes one to the other, and the actors, before they can actually begin to act Orton, they have to learn how to really listen, like they've never listened before. Their lines are okay, but you've got to hear another and react to it. You've got to know how does it affect you, and out of that comes belly laugh, and it's a rolling belly laugh. If you see a well-done production of What the Butler Saw, the audience gets into fits and they can't stop. They go from one to the other, and the actors have to. They're all they can do is time themselves in so they can be heard, because you get a rolling effect, and it's fabulous. That's a great play.
So you spent a lot of time directing theatre.
Yeah.
In the theatre.
Yeah. Then I went on to radio. I did bits of TV.
Didn't you?
I spent a lot of time writing.
Yeah, but you did your own writing on the side, did you? Or was...
Yeah. Well, I started out as a journalist. I spent about 3 years in journalism, and I just didn't like interviewing people. I didn't like, interfering with people's lives, and the whole concept of door stopping is again. It hurts me. I can't do it.
Yeah.
I hate it. And anyway, I quite like being interviewed by other people, like you.
Yeah.
Sure, I don't mind being interviewed, but I don't like interviewing.
No.
Because it's intrusive.
It is.
Bloody rude,
Well,
so I got out.
I just happened to be here having dinner and having a glass of wine, so I don't feel as though I've doorstepped you.
Yeah.
But when you were growing up, what is it that drew you to comedy?
What to me? I didn't have that. I actually, growing up, until I was about 11, I was at a primary school, but I was very rarely there. Every time I sneezed, my mum would keep me off school. So she was convinced I was really ill. So I used to have these funny doctors coming to look at me. I had the Queen's doctor homeopathic doctor come to look at me, and he told my mother that I was all right. He'll grow out of it, he said. But she kept me at home.
Well, how did you get the Queen's homeopathic doctor?
My dad knew him got him from this doctor that he used to drive around, who was Dr. Hobson. He was a New Zealand homeopath. So it was very sexy and fashionable in the 50s. Homeopathy, spiritualism, the occult, all that kind of stuff. That was their heyday, or the end of their heyday. Yeah, my parents were in all of it. They were soaked in it. My mum used to go see spiritualists, and they used to come and do sittings in our house. And she would go and see Mrs. Yu Wren. Mrs. Yu Wren was a little old lady somewhere in Hounslow, who they swore by. My Uncle Frank used to come, and after dinner they'd go into the lounge, and he'd ask to put on the what was the record? The Nuns Chorus. It's from Casanova, from an opera called operetta called Casanova, and that would send him off into trance, and then he'd give messages.
Really?
I never used to go into that. I thought it was bloody boring. But
do you think
I was only a kid.
They were grifters or scammers?
We knew what was going on. It wasn't a secret at all. It was never a secret. But they had healers come to the house. All that kind of stuff. All that kind of. And my dad had a big Grundig tape recorder, and they used to record all these spiritualistic things. And then homeopathy was sort of on the edges of that. So I knew about all that stuff from the very beginning. It's just in the blood, just part of it. I know. I had my astrology done by a philosopher lady I met in my 40s.
Yeah.
She was an Austrian woman, and she was gorgeous. And she also did aromatherapy massages.
All right.
Which I think you might have liked that, Bob.
Well, extras?
Because I certainly did.
Yeah.
We won't talk about that, though. Her name was Waltrud.
Her name was what?
Her name was Waltrud.
Waltrud?
Waltrud, Waltraud. She was Austrian. And she was very beautiful.
And you're a Scorpio?
Yeah. I didn't know about that. I'm quite on the cusp, as it's known. But she breaks everything down to all the planets.
Yeah.
And every one of my planets is Scorpio. I'm treble Scorpion. I'm just total.
So you can be a bit spiteful.
No, Scorpions can be lovely and kind.
Yeah, but listen, Stuart, your writing can be quite spiteful.
Oh, it is.
You know, we have annoyed a lot of people.
Well, yeah, but I think they deserve it.
We've trod on a lot of people on our way to the bottom.
Well, where would they be otherwise?
Exactly.
You know, it's creative, and it's only a certain type of people. Yeah, sure. We had a task to do. That's you were talking about when we ruled that
Exactly.
that website, whether it was a forum on a
Yes.
website. But we were the only ones that could write. They didn't.
They hated us.
Yeah. Well, they didn't because there was a wide audience, probably a big majority, that didn't dare come on, but
they
were
lurked.
thoroughly entertained. They loved it. You know, that's all dead. That's all dead. That's changed because the times have changed, and you can't go around doing things like that. You upset people now. It's this was pre-woke. I don't mind woke. I don't mind everybody being nice to each other. I can cope.
It's not
with
funny though, is it?
It doesn't come naturally. You know, I think people need to know the truth sometimes when they're thoroughly boring, and don't deserve to be taken too seriously. Depending on what they want. Some of the people around here in Chiswick are bloody awful people.
Yeah.
They really
Well,
are.
we had a lot of things going on, didn't we, with Pigeon Farm and my gossip column and suburban mediocrity. For me, comedy comes from like a very pure old place, and also there's elements of black humour. You know, I think when you've come from like different backgrounds, it's a coping mechanism, but it's also a way of like imposing your will on other people.
It was always at its best in the lower basic classes of that structure. Once you actually get to the manor born or something, it gets boring.
Yeah,
I don't
exactly,
think that's comedy.
Exactly.
I don't call that comedy.
Yeah.
That's just, how Oscar Wilde managed to be so funny and witty with the kind of people he was dealing with. I mean, the guy's a genius.
Yeah.
Clearly, but that doesn't happen very often. And the TV sort of copycat ideas of that. But Steptoe is much better, or what's his name? The Jewish dad, Alf Garnett.
Alf Garnett, yeah.
Yeah, that lot.
Till Death Us Do Part.
But that's vicious.
Well, that was the heyday.
That's vicious. That's beautiful comedy.
Yeah.
That's Spate being absolutely. There's a reason for that.
Yeah. Well, that's what I grew up on, and then of course, you know, we had Tony Hancock. We were talking about Tony yesterday because I was hanging out with someone who knew his stepson.
Yeah.
So in Margate they had Hattie Jakes and John Le Mesurier and you know, Tony Hancock, and I mean that's the kind of thing that informs your work as a comedic writer, I guess.
I was influenced a bit by some of the writers that I worked on. I'm too lazy. I should have written more. Black comedy.
Yeah.
That sort of. I like writing that sort of stuff.
Yeah. For me, one of the main sources of comedy, of course, in England is the class system, which is a glorious creation.
What?
The class system.
Oh yeah, the class system is so important. It's so important. When it clashes, and when it's in the hands of a really good writer, the comedy streams out it because it's so bloody ridiculous. People's attitudes towards one another. I think Coronation Street was at its best when it was half a comedy.
Yeah.
It's gone. It's lost it ages and ages and ages ago, because the writers disappeared and the producers didn't know what they're bloody talking about, and they got too serious. They wouldn't know if anything was funny or not, and it all got ridiculous, and more murders took place, more robberies took place, more people got serious illnesses took place. They were all having affairs.
Jack and Vera Duckworth, they were very funny.
It just got boring.
And my first crush in 1960 was Pat Phoenix.
Oh yeah,
Elsie Tanner.
I had dinner with her.
Did you?
Yeah, Pat Phoenix. I did 3 plays up at Manchester, at the Library Theatre, and I spent a long time up there. And I found some people up there that I use quite a lot. And what happened up there is we were very into it. Before I got there, they were very into the Coronation Street crowd. The Coronation Street crowd loved the theatre. They all wanted to go back to their days in the theatre, but they were busy making themselves famous doing the soap. So I spent a long time at a big table having dinner with Pat and all that crowd. Peter Dudley, I actually made his career in Coronation Street. I can't remember the goalkeeper, because he got the offer, and the guy that ran the theatre said I couldn't. He was cast to do my next play. He said I had to keep him. He said, you can't let him go. I said, I'm going to let him go. Of course he can go. He's going to bloody make a fortune. Why should he do this play? I can recast it. And I let him go. And he went, and he was in that for 10 years. There was another couple of guys. This is a long time ago. But they were a nice crowd. They all loved the theatre. Of course they do. They're actors. Pat Phoenix was an actress to a boot.
She was.
She'd been in so many things for years before that happened. That was common of all of them. They were.
She was in Hammer House of Horror. I did a bit of research into her because I was researching the occult and her links to Aleister Crowley, and she was early in Hammer horror films. And I think she was part of that whole working class scene in the late 50s. You know, when is it Joan Greenwood or Littlewood? And she was one of those that came up that way.
Jane looked for the crowd. Yeah, I was knocking around with them quite a lot. They were a good lot. There was a woman that I was reading about a few weeks ago who was Winifred Atwell's pianist. Oh, not pianist. She was a pianist as well, Winifred Atwell, wasn't she? Or she was assistant or something, or stand. I don't know. And she turned into a famous bloody soap actress. I can't remember who it was. They came from good sources, that old crowd. Now they come from drama schools.
Yeah.
Most of this lot didn't go to drama school. They didn't do very much at all. The little bird, what's her name, who died recently?
So I heard.
No, the one with the big tits. What's her name? You know.
Which one was that?
Oh, in Carry On.
Oh, not Babs Windsor.
Yeah, Babs Windsor.
Yeah.
I mean, she was in with Joan Littlewood.
Yeah, of course she was.
She started in that kind of group. They all had that kind of upbringing.
Yeah, she was fabulous.
That's the way to learn how to
Of course, she hung around with gangsters, you know, like the Crays and Ronnie Knight. So, you know, they lived the life as well.
Well, Ron and Reg.
Yeah, Ron and Reg.
Oh, I love Ron and Reg.
They were naughty boys.
Oh, they were. But we grew up in the people that we all loved Monty Python.
Yeah.
And he used to give her mother flowers and all that. Dinsdale. I've seen grown men pull their own heads off rather than go round to that conversation pit.
Yeah.
For a chat with Ron.
Yeah.
Well, you need some. No,
She's really nice.
Those red trousers.
She's nice. No, she's nice.
Bloody hell, Stuart. Where'd you get those?
Minky, you're gonna have to be quiet. Minky, darling, you have to be quiet.
So you have a bit of history of spiritualism.
Yeah. My parents were involved in spiritualism. Naturally, I think it cropped up before I was born, and people of their age in the 50s. It was all the rage. It was a normal thing for people in suburbia to do. What else is it? TV was.
That's what really tickles me, the fact that it's a suburban thing.
Yes,
as
very
well.
suburban. But it was the Marylebone Association of Spiritual Healers is where they all gathered.
Hang on, Marylebone Association of Spiritual Healers. Initials MASH.
Of spiritualism or something like that. It was quite famous. And that's where because I never had any uncles or aunts because we didn't know, the real blood things. So my auntie, except for Auntie Lily, my auntie Tina and Uncle Frank, my auntie Bunty and Uncle Bill, and people, they all came. They were all gathered. Jack found them at Marylebone at this thing, and they would come back to our house, and there they explored, and that's basically the main thing they were interested in, other than smoking and drinking and having fun. They loved it, and they gathered together quite a wide circle of other people, like Mrs. Yu Wren, who was a spiritualist who would go into trance in Hounslow, and there was another guy who was a spiritual healer. They believed in it totally. We had on our bookshelves something that you know about, that Scientology guy, L. Ron Hubbard.
Yeah.
On our bookshelves in the 50s, I knew those books by L. Ron Hubbard because my dad and mum had read them all.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And they took that very seriously too.
Why do you think they got into that?
Well, that's what they did. That was that was the society that was quite common. Lots and lots and lots of people were really very interested. There was no way of disproving it. People have always been interested in what happens after death. They have. That normal death-fearing people, they had to go to church, and they sort it out that way through faith, or they get into spiritualism. Or nowadays, not many people go to church either. So, we're a largely faithless society. So it's not so much fun. They had a lot of fun, and they used to enjoy themselves.
Did you see these meetings?
I didn't go in there. They used to take place in the lounge. You couldn't see, and it's a good question that, you couldn't see in our lounge when they were having these, because there were 4 or 5 or 10 people smoking so much you couldn't see across the room.
Smoking what? Just
Fags.
Cigarettes?
Fags.
Fags.
Yeah, cigarettes. The place was like a cloud of smoke. And certain music was being played, and it was almost always sort of spiritually classical, to do with nuns or...
Nuns?
Nuns were quite big. My Uncle Frank couldn't go into trance unless you played the Nuns chorus from Casanova. And then he would go into trance, and it wasn't sort of, is there anybody there that wants up the yes, 2 taps? No, that's not what it was about.
We just corpse him.
You can corpse, darling.
What do you mean your Uncle Frank go into trance?
He would go into trance, and he would bring messages.
Oh yeah.
He would have messages from his guides. So any spiritualist would have a guide or guides. Now, I don't know who they were, but Frank used to have a guide or guides, and they would come to him when he would go into trance, and when he was in that trance, they would bring messages with him for the people that were there. And,
what messages from beyond the grave?
well, obviously, yeah. Well, they weren't from down the road. It wasn't the milk one wasn't involved. It was just pure spiritualism. I did one. I got a mate that I just came back from in Somerset called Richard. I was at school with him, and when we were 20, we were together. We were in a group, and we did a Ouija board séance. And I've known Richard for ages, and there was a very desperately sad marriage going wrong. They were there, and there was another bloke, and everybody quite believed in it. And sure enough, after a bit, the glass started to move. You know, it started. Is there anybody else? Yes. Who is it? It's Jake. Oh yeah. And you have this conversation, and if you take it seriously, it goes that way. So we were doing that, and suddenly Richard, my friend, he starts to go very, very, very strange and funny, and he was not acting. I've known him for too long, and we've spoken about it since.
Yeah.
He was taken over by... He was taken over by something or someone in some kind of way, and it was quite frightening. And he was kind of salivating and making a complete caboodle of what was going on. And it was serious. We got into, we were going around, it was a bit like those films where you get rid of Dracula and you make a sign of the cross.
Yeah.
So we were doing that kind of stuff, making signs of crosses and trying to get rid of this evil spirit, or this spirit that had taken over Richard. And eventually the spirit left him, and he was left there sweating and exhausted, and he's not a good enough actor to have done that.
No.
Quite frankly, you couldn't act it. So whether it was self-induced hypnotism or not, I don't know. I haven't a clue. But I don't think it was. He's too clever. I don't know what it was. I've never been able to explain it. It's quite dramatic to watch.
It is, yeah. But the fact
And he's never gone anywhere near it since. Terrified.
Really?
Absolutely terrified. That was the end of his spiritualistic career. He was quite interested in it for a while.
spiritualistic career.
Career, yeah. Well, adjunct to his life. It's something he didn't pursue anymore. He got out of the way. It was quite funny.
Well, thought of this taking place in a suburban house.
They always take.
It's a bit.
It's always in
Joe
suburban
Orton, isn't it?
houses. It's very Joe Orton. I had this idea of having for a drama, of using your house. That there was going to be. There were people that gathered. If you can imagine a setting for a play, people have come to Tregerth. Why? What are they doing there? And they're discussing things with each other. They know each other. And what's it all? I haven't worked out what it's about yet. But I decided that the way this play is going to work is somewhere after about 15 or 20 minutes, you're going to discover, because somebody comes in the room and they start, the discussion goes in that direction. And the bloke that comes into the room said, What are you talking about? You can't contact the dead. You are dead. You're the dead. You
I knew
can't.
you were gonna say
How can
that.
you, if you're dead, contact the dead?
Yeah.
So what I'm going to do is turn the whole thing on its face, and have dead people trying to,
That is really strange.
which is crazy.
That's really strange because I often see the ghost of D.H. Lawrence there, and I sometimes get the sensation that I'm actually dead, and I'm haunting the place.
Yes, that's the idea.
Mm-hmm.
It needs working on, but it's got a great hook on it. Well, Irina says it's got a great hook.
Yeah, well, if Irina says it,
I think
it's got to be true.
It'd be good fun
She's
to
cooking
write
our
as
play
well.
other, so we have to keep it sweet.
Be fun to write, and if it turns in, the stage setting would be set in. I would use Tregerthen in the headline, but if they film it, they'll have to film it at your place, and you'll get a big fee.
A big fee.
And you'll get very rich.
Very rich.
Because if I can write a best-selling play, and if they come along and they make a film of it, it would have to be made in your cottage.
Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's go. It's business.
You know what, Stuart?
Yeah,
This time next year,
yeah.
we could be millionaires.
We could be millionaires.
Be lucky.
It is. Be lucky.
This is Psychic Art by someone called Coral Polge, 1965. And how did it come into your possession?
Because either my father or my mother went to see Coral Polge,
Right.
and she drew that. I don't know the Coral Polge. I never met the woman. Now here's some more.
And what was she, a spiritual artist?
Psychic artist. You look her up.
A what artist?
You look her up.
Psychic artist.
Now these are by psychic artists.
Bloody hell, these are weird, aren't they?
They are.
God, it's got that black and white ghostly quality, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
So, how have you got these?
Well, because they were my father's and mother's.
And they went to this.
My father did it. This is a different one. I can't remember her name, but I've got it somewhere. These are quite interesting. They're always the same sort.
Is she a nun?
Looks like
Well,
it.
there we
doesn't
are.
it?
We've got a bit of nunnery
We've
going on.
got a cross.
Get thee to a nunnery.
Yeah, get thee to an area, Amelia, etc. But there's loads of them. Look at them here. A lot of them are Red Indians.
Red Indians.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
No, that's not a Red Indian. That's quite good. That's quite interesting. Anyway, you're getting views here of masterworks by quite a famous, I can't remember her name, but I've got it down, quite a famous psychic artist of the period. So these are originals, and they're old, and
Very good.
I could sell them for £20,000 each, couldn't I?
Do you reckon?
I don't know. What are they worth? 10 quid?
I don't know.
54. To my father. Thank you for your kind letter received this morning. I've done your paintings. They are not all guides, some are ancestors. Whoever comes back are helpers, but it's only the unselfish and the sympathetic return. In spite of many messages I've listened to from the platform, I am firmly convinced that only those who have loved, truly loved, and are in charity with their neighbours, as the church expresses it, in bracket, and then denies it, are those who are our true helpers. In my 17 years old as a psychic artist, I have so many times had proof of this. This is what was going on.
So these are letters from the psychic artist.
It's great. Look, so she's writing to my father.
Yeah.
Page 2. She's going through the pictures she's done. I showed you some.
Would they have paid her for these?
Pardon?
Would they have paid her a fee to paint these
I haven't a clue.
psychic arts?
Haven't a clue. Haven't a clue.
I would imagine so.
Could be. Well, you probably contribute.
Yeah. A voluntary contribution.
But they became quite famous. Coral Polge became particularly famous. But Margaret Bevan, so that's her signature, Mrs. Mrs. Margaret Bevan.
And who's Margaret Bevan? Was she?
She's a psychic artist living in West Chelmsford.
But not the same as Cole Pole.
Yeah, of course you can. This is not Coral Polish. This is
another
Margaret Bevan. Margaret Bevan did the dark ones.
Right.
Those black things. Coral Polish did that one of the nun.
Yeah. Quite they were well into this, weren't they?
Oh, I'm tell you. So who's this from? This is the same Mrs. B. This is the same. She's explaining who these people are. Like, for example, number 3. This is a young Zulu, Zambolo. The strange thing sticking out of his black woolly hair was a small ostrich feather. He looked gentle and kind and yet big and powerful, and he gives strength to the weak through healing wrought by the other 2. And they're all linked up.
That's amazing.
It's extraordinary stuff.
Yeah, it is.
This is really your cup of tea.
It is.
Genuine stuff.
Thanks for showing me that,
Yep, pleasure.
Stuart.
Yeah.
Look at this. This is a typical meal in the Kerr household. Paella,
Oh, you cur.
fine wines,
Fine bloody
cooked by the lovely Irina.
Good at Sainsbury's.
And now we're going to get a story.
You want to hear about?
I want to hear that story you just told me.
On
Tell it
my,
without all the swearing.
on my mum's side. That was Sid Jones. Sid Jones. He was the youngest of 13 kids. His father made good in Hackney. It all happened in Hackney. In the late 18th century, he started a hansom cab business, and he owned horses, which he kept around Hackney, and he did bloody well for himself, and he looked after all these 13 kids, except the youngest one, because he died, and the youngest one, my granddad had to bring himself up, but that was it. So, what was I going to say about him?
He had a sharp knife.
He had a sharp knife. Yeah, they were terribly poor. He was a porter at Smithfield Market. So honking around the great big lumps of meat, that's what he did. They're very poor. And he had a very, very sharp knife that he kept. And in the 30s, he used to go around getting old car tyres and cut car tyres up and make soles for shoes for his kids. That's the shoes that they wore.
Very enterprising.
Very enterprising. That's how he did. He was killed by lightning in 1946. He went up to Springfield Park, got caught in a storm, was standing under a tree with half a dozen others. He's dead.
And he was the chosen one.
Everyone else not touched.
How about what Sydney did in the war?
Oh yeah, Sid. He signed up. All the Jones kids signed up to get into the war, but unfortunately, Sid was so myopic. His eyes were so bad that the army took him on, and then couldn't find anything for him to do. And
I thought he lost his sight through the pox or something.
That was earlier. Yeah,
The what?
I think
What pox?
probably measles. Probably.
The pox.
Some pox.
Probably measles.
Oh, measles.
It was probably
something
measles
like that.
or something like that.
But I thought you said he wore thick pebble glasses.
They were hugely thick pebble glasses. He couldn't see. The story actually goes on from that. So he, the army in the end, they wouldn't take him. They had to, whatever it was, kick him out of the army because he hadn't been anywhere. They couldn't do anything with him.
They
couldn't
promote
see.
him to-
So do you know what he did? The guy that can't see, he got a job driving lorries in London. So he's blind as a bat, and he's driving these bloody lorries around. So he leaves Smithfield, and he gets this job driving lorries. He can't see 6 inches in front of his face.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. He
Couldn't make it up.
You couldn't make it up. But that's how it used to happen.
So this is the kind of background you came from.
Yeah.
You're not actually posh at all.
No, I come from a good, solid working class Hackney background, and I'm proud of it. My sister is a snob.
Is she?
She's sort of like, she was ashamed of her mother.
Ashamed of what?
Ashamed of her mother.
Her mother.
My mum was great. My mum was very, very sexy,
Yeah.
Beautiful work. Lived to be 97.
Right.
And it was gorgeous. I mean, she was an East End kid. She used to strut her stuff around there, and she was great. But my sister had higher thoughts. My sister conjured up this idea. This is a story against my sister, which sounds horribly wrong of me, but I will do it because Ira likes this story.
It won't go any further than around this table.
I wouldn't say, no, on YouTube it can't
internet.
go any further. But this is a wonderful story. She worked out that her father, Jack, my wonderful father, Jack, was actually a royal blood in a strange way. And it's all to do with the Duchess of Duke Street, that he must have been the product of the Edward VII, who was having an affair.
He put it around a bit,
Yeah, he was putting it around everything. Who had an affair with that lady, and that's where Jack came from. There was no mystery about it. There was no mystery about it. He was of royal blood. My sister was convinced. When I actually pointed out to her that he was also Jewish,
Right.
that kind of blew it all wide open.
Yeah.
Of course he wasn't. He's just but that's snobbishness times 10.
My contribution to this story is I was convinced for years that Duchess of Duke Street is a joke name because it's such a dumb name. So I heard this story for 20-something years, thinking that being descended from the Duchess of Duke Street was a euphemism for being a stupid snob.
Well,
And apparently Duchess of Duke Street is a real title.
it was true.
Yeah.
It was true. It's one of the-
It's
All the funnier for it.
Is that as true as Quality Street? Yeah. It's an oxymoron, really, isn't it? Duchess of Duke Street.
What happened to these people?
Anyway,
They're
enough of this malicious scandal.
yeah.
See, that was Grandpa's